Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. I'm your host, Carly, and here we break down complex issues around health, the climate crisis, and social justice through a vegan lens. We'll talk about the magic link between your well being and the planet's health, because luckily, choosing a healthier, mindful lifestyle for yourself often creates healthier vibes for our planet too. Staying consciously clueless means getting to show up knowing nothing, but staying open to all that you can learn. From feasting on plant-based meals and reducing waste to learning to meditate, every step you take contributes to your wellness and makes systematic change for the world. You can make a difference. This podcast will show you how.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are one half of the Vegan Punks,
That's
and
right.
I would love to start with your own vegan journey. Where did that start?
Yeah, I suppose we're going back to 2017, so what, 7 years now. And before that, I was one of those people that went, I could never go vegan. It's too extreme. I know we've probably all been there. And then, like, how did I think that?
I appreciate your honesty with that, though. I think that's really critical in other people that are in different spots of their journey. There's that kind of, oh, well, I've always been vegan, and that's not the case.
No, it's not the case for the majority of people, I would imagine.
Mhm.
I guess when I go into this backstory, I always like to say that I went vegan by way of osmosis. I was working at Ecotricity, which is the world's first green energy company, which is also the world's first vegan energy company now. And basically, it was all about the environment. So they're a green energy company, and everything that they did was all about, what we can do to turn around the climate crisis. And they had 4 pillars. It was energy, transport, food being the key one here, and nature, of course. But basically, I saw through working there and being around the people that worked there, and like the company ethos was all about being vegan and doing as little harm to the planet as possible. And so it just spiraled from there. And then I went from, I was pescatarian, so I didn't eat meat, only like the fish side, and I didn't really like dairy anyway, on the most part. So I don't have the connection with like cheese and dairy that like a lot of people struggle with. So it was just over time being around people who already lived the lifestyle, and then just questioning why I wasn't doing it and what I could do to adopt the lifestyle. And gradually over time, by the time 2017 rolled around, I think it was just like chocolate that I needed to get out of my diet. That was like a dairy chocolate. And yeah, then just never really looked back once I got over that hurdle.
I love that the energy company you were working for, Green Energy, was also talking about food and veganism, because I think we know that a lot of the environmental spaces really love talking about everything, and then you talk about veganism and it's, ooh, let me pull back a little bit. That is too much pushing on my own beliefs and understandings of the world, which I get. It's a valid response, right? It's a worldview shift. But I love that company was already bringing that in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they've just been very forward on environmental issues just for such a long time. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't like every person that worked there was vegan. There was
Right.
obviously,
Right.
like, I wasn't vegan when I started there even. And then I moved into the marketing team, and then working really closely with the message because I was running the social media channels. So it all
Mm.
just came into my consciousness. When I was going to like the company events, they were all catered vegan as well. It wasn't just talking about it, but it was actually tasting and seeing all of the different options that were available. And this was back in 2016, 2017. So it wasn't as good as it is now. And even then, it was like, oh, actually, it made me see that this isn't actually going to be that hard if I really want to do it.
And just normalizing it. Oh, this is just the food we have at events. It's not, you
Yeah.
don't have to be vegan, but when we put this on, it is going to be a vegan event, I think is a good approach for people to be like, oh, I can explore this.
Yeah, and it was super low key in that sense. And everyone that was at the events were like, the food's amazing. It never
Hmm.
missed. It's always good. But one interesting fact that I always remember about my time there was they went from having dairy milk in the office that was provided for like the teas and coffees to then oat milk or rice milk, or they went through a number of different
Hmm.
trials to find the right one. And I can't remember the exact figure, but I think the consumption of the milk throughout the company went up by something like 700% because people liked it more. Is the only
Wow.
thing we could have gleaned from that was there was people were consuming it more. And why were they consuming it more? Because they liked it more.
I love that. I love that, just switching the option and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and there wasn't really pushback. It was actually, I think a lot of people that I knew at the time were like, we actually now even buy oat milk at home because it's nicer for our coffees.
So when you started at this green energy company, were you going into it because of an interest in the environment or sustainability, or were you going in it for a marketing job? Where was that kind of entry point?
I was actually really interested in the environment and always have been. And it just so happened that I was there at the right time to apply to work there. And I was at a point where what do I actually want to do now? And I really liked the idea of working in a creative field. So then I was trying to move into marketing, which I had done a little bit of before. And I have a background in photography. It's all those sort of creative skills that come together, and it works really well for social media. But yeah, I applied for the marketing position and started there at the very bottom and just learned everything, did a qualification, and then went in to lead the social media team. And yeah, just really learned a lot and learned a lot about the environment. It's really helped to shape a lot of what I know about the world, really.
I love that there was so much space for you to grow with that knowledge, right? That have a workplace that's encouraging you to learn more and to dive in. That it sounds, and when you look at your social media, it's so clear that you have experience making great content.
So it's something that I think you can only develop over time as well. I don't think there's a fast track. And thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say.
Oh, yeah. You went vegan 2017 from osmosis of time. It came into your consciousness and didn't leave. So then what translated then from going vegan to saying, I'm really going to experiment with tofu and make recipes for the internet?
Yeah, good question. And I think it all happened over time. At the time, 2017, even though veganism, I think, was on the rise, it still was looked at as not the mainstream. So it was just one of those things that we wanted to do, say, get online, show people. And we've always said the same thing, is that veganism is easy to cook food that's vegan. It's easy to access and it tastes delicious. And so they're the three things that have always been guiding the food that we make. And then just over time, it was just experimenting with recipes, with cooking. So we both really enjoy cooking, and I learn all about food photography, even though I had a photography background. Food photography is a different beast. And then it just all developed, and we just wanted to keep experimenting with different types of content. And we genuinely do love tofu. So let's just do this tofu thing. Like, we'll put something out, see if people like it. And then it turned out people did like it. So we just leaned into it a lot more. And it wasn't really very difficult because we were already doing all of those things.
I love the specificity of tofu as well, not only because you can do so many freaking things with it, of course, but there is all of the, oh gosh, toxic masculinity, maybe through pushback on soy. There's a lot of cultural, social understandings of soy. There's that constant comment that I need to go delete like 48,000 of on a recent reel of, did you know you kill more animals in soy crops? And all of that stuff, right? Soy and tofu is this really interesting thing in veganism. So I love that you're like, that's our focus.
Yeah, and especially Dan was like the face for a lot of those videos. We really did come up against a lot of those comments, and you know what? You have to develop that thick skin so it doesn't get to us. But actually, that's not the case, and this is debunked by science. But do you know what the really beautiful thing about it was? That we had people coming in with all different levels of expertise. So we've got dietitians, nutritionists coming in and just saying what's what, and we're like, oh, okay, I'll pin your comment comment to the top then, because then at
Yeah.
least you've got an authority that you can point to say, actually, this isn't true information. Let's learn. Let's move past this and learn.
Do you engage with some of those? I struggle with where is the education, where is that time worth it versus where do I just block your ass? How do you handle that?
Yeah. That's really a really good question. So we're always learning on that side of things. We have had to block quite a lot of people lately. I don't know, is this just what is it on the rise? I don't
I was
know.
just gonna say, okay,
Um,
honestly, that makes me feel a little better. Not that I want you to be dealing with this too. Ugh,
No, honestly, I don't know. We had one video, it was on honey of all topics. It wasn't even on tofu, it wasn't on soy, it wasn't on even anything that's really like
interesting.
meat based. But it was, you can make vegan honey from dandelions. So I went
Hmm.
and picked a load of dandelions. I actually made this piece of content last year and I was like, I'll repost it, easy post sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and it blew up and it did well last year, it did even better this year. But I don't know what happened, but we were getting a lot of the same comments going. It was really funny. It was like, oh, bro knows nothing about the bee movie. It was all like, she knows nothing about the bee movie.
What?
Constantly, like, you didn't learn about bees from the bee movie, clearly. We had a lot of that. We had a lot of much worse inappropriateness wise
Yeah.
coming through as well. We had the classic, oh, you're taking the bees' food to deprive them of their
Just,
food. I was like, okay, I've taken all the dandelions in the world. No.
can you
Yeah, a
imagine?
lot of that, but can you imagine? It's just instant block. Honestly, it was just it wasn't even to the point where I'm reviewing. It was just lots and lots of troll accounts. You can do block this person and also block any account that they make as well. And then you find that another 10 comments goes because it's all from the same person. So
Wild.
so I don't know whether there's like some anti-vegan corner of the internet that's go to this video, look, copy and paste these things, because the strangest thing is that all of them were a variation on either the exact same comment or the exact same topic.
Wild. That feels
Mm.
adjacent to some of the things I've gotten recently. I posted a reel this week about the cognitive dissonance, the difference between how we treat our pets and companion animals versus the animals in the animal agriculture industry. And people are very upset with me. There have been comments about how I could be treated how animals are treated. That would be a good solution. Nasty stuff.
Really
But there's
nasty.
quite a few that are just, it does seem like someone used one line and then asked AI 10 variations of the same line and pasted. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
right.
barely have time to engage with people I like and appreciate, let alone.
Yeah, no, there's no point in engaging with that. What I ended up doing in the end, you can hide words. There's like a list in Instagram in your settings. If you're getting the same comments over and over again and you're just blocking them anyway, you can hide those words so Instagram won't even let the comment come through to you.
Oh, wow. That is a hot tip.
I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. And that has been a really big help.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I won't derail us too far into troll land, but it's so real. And I imagine a real part of being a part of the vegan punks and being online. And really, anytime you post about veganism, there is that potential.
Yeah, and I would go against the grain and say up to a point, like it's good to get those sorts of comments
Boosts my
because I think
algorithm.
yeah, boost the engagement for you. Teach Instagram, this is a really good post, that's great. But then when it's all those comments and all you're doing is having to block and delete and all of that, it's just not helpful to anyone. And I think
Hmm.
you can tell in the settings. So like on that video in particular, I think, I don't know, it's got like 500,000 views or something. And from a reel
Wow.
like that, we would get quite a lot new follows, but it was for us, it was quite low. So I can tell that like the people that were watching it were not necessarily the people it was intended for. There were the people who it was intended for, absolutely
Of
loving the
course.
content, and lots of people really being so supportive. But it landed somewhere that's not the part of the internet that I know well or understand. And so it wasn't like the most useful for us to get in front of those people. And there comes a point where you just realize it's a waste of time. So you've got to move on.
Yeah, I've turned off comments on one reel before because it was just tipping in that way, where you're like, there's so many that I'm tired of blocking and deleting that this one's just gonna live without.
Yeah,
And those boundaries I'm learning and I think are really important for being online in general, but specifically creating this content. How do you
definitely.
take care of yourself or be mindful when those things happen in droves?
Really, the one that I recommend that everyone does is switch off notifications. So
Yes,
so I just don't have any notifications come onto my
same.
phone because yeah,
Game
it's so
changer.
good. Game changing. But that's not to say you're not seeing the things that you need to see. It's just
Right.
that you're choosing when you see it. I think there's a really big distinction there. And that's something that really helped me because I found, like, even with email, so I don't even have email notifications on. I know you said you don't have any notifications on as well. Just like, I don't need to know when a latest promo from a brand has come in. You just don't need to know those things. So I think it protects your energy, protects where your focus is going, and helps you to stay on track on whatever you're doing instead of
Mhm.
getting derailed. And that's the biggest thing for me. And then I also think that just over the years, I've just learned, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter what people are saying online. Like, it's not really a reflection of what people think of me. It's a reflection of their own thoughts and feelings towards themselves.
That part. Yes, it's a good reminder to come back to not spin too far out of control, like you said, worrying about someone else's bullshit basically that they're throwing at you.
Exactly. There's no point. Like in the early days when we got some comments to begin with and they were really mean, and I was like, "Oh, I hate this.
Yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
that's years ago now. And I just think if you wanna keep on going and wanna get to a point where you're like seeing progress, I think you've got to try and block all of that out and not let it get to you, because we're in our track. We're doing what we know is the right thing for us. And we don't need that negativity coming towards us.
So we've talked about the vegan side of the vegan punks, but what made you bring in your love for punk music into kind of the account, into the space?
Oh, thanks for asking. That's a really good question. We just love it so much. We love the punk scene. Like in the UK, there's a really good DIY punk scene that we attend a lot of events. I'm wearing a Manchester Punk t-shirt. Actually, you can't see it. But yeah, we just absolutely, it's one of our biggest loves. So we wanted to bring in the veganism, which is all the food. That's what we focus on. The punk side, because it's also different. They're both different subcultures around the world. And we just wanted to bring them together because it's two of our biggest passions. And also we learned that being part of the punk scene, it's really intertwined with intersectional activism. But so there is like a really strong vegan arm within the punk scene. So we'll often go to gigs or festivals and meet people that we've met online, and we've made loads of friends like because of Instagram and all of like the way that brings people together. They're just for us, they just go together really well.
I love that. And when I discovered you online, I was like, that makes sense. Those two must overlap in some ways. And I'll admit, especially in the UK, I don't know much about the punk scene, but it makes sense that these kind of both in different ways, like you said, counterculture movements, though, would have some overlap. And is there more overlap than you even imagined?
Way more. I actually wrote an article on this exact topic for the Vegan Society last year.
Amazing.
And so I thought I knew some, but there's so much more when I like deep dived. It's just intertwined like back to, I think it went back to 70s or maybe even earlier. There was elements of both in both movements sort of things. Yeah, really interesting. And it's surprising that you go to a gig and meet someone and it would be like, oh, should we go to the vegan truck sort of thing? And it's, yeah, I was going there anyway.
That's so sweet. That's amazing. And I love that it makes it really authentic to you, right? It's not that people can't just post recipes. That's beautiful. I'm not saying that you have to be more or less, but it is you look at your account and you're like, oh, this is them. This really is what they are doing in the world, how they're showing up, and they're just sharing a part of that, which I'm much more called towards.
Oh, lovely. I'm so glad that comes across, because that is something that I was worried about, because at first I was bringing in a lot of the sort of music that we would be listening to, but I just found that it's really difficult with a voiceover. So I have to
Mm,
like use just instrumental and more, not that it's not a beat, but I just have to use different tempo sort of things. So we get a couple of comments sometimes going, oh, I didn't think that this is what punk people listen to. That's not the majority. But yeah, like I'm really pleased that comes across in that way, because it can feel quite vulnerable actually, like when you're trying to be who you are and you might get a negative comment or something. Yeah, I'm really pleased it comes across that way.
So when you dove in and became vegan, it was from the environmental side, really. It sounds you were experiencing good food, but you were at this green energy place. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah, for sure. I always said that when I went vegetarian, so sorry, pescatarian first, it was more
Hmm.
from, it was, I guess it was an environment, but it was also like just what I liked. Like I didn't like eating meat, so I didn't eat it. And it was after that that I learned about the horrors, and then it just cements the worldview, and then you learn about everything it does for the environment, and then just being around all of that just compounded for me.
It's so similar that there's so many people that come to veganism from different avenues and different lanes, but there's always this common thread of how like all the dominoes fall. There's your intro point, and then there's learning about how it really is intertwined in all of these systems and all of these layers. And it's so cool to see that there's all these different intro points, but the dominoes always fall to all the other points. I don't know, there's something quite beautiful about that.
Yeah, there is. I definitely agree with that.
When you started sharing about this online and growing your account, did you have friends or family or anybody in your life push back or say, "What are you doing? This doesn't make sense"?
Not really. We are actually really fortunate and have very supportive friends and family. Actually, all of Dan's, almost all of Dan's immediate family are vegan themselves as well. Christmas and events is very easy. We don't have to
Yeah.
worry about being catered for or being awkward. And our friends, even if then we don't have lots of vegan friends, we do have quite a few, especially the ones we've made online. They are just all been really supportive, just actually really want to try the recipes. And we had
Hmm.
someone at the weekend that I haven't spoken to in a long time going, I tried freezing tofu. I tried it. And I was like, no way. So yeah, you don't know who you're going to reach. And I think often, I know we've talked about trolls and people leaving negative comments, but I think often people they want to be supportive of the people that they
Truly.
know and their friends.
Yeah, I believe that as well. So I have to ask what some of your favorite experiments with tofu have been.
Gosh. My favorite one is the silken tofu one that we did. It was a frozen silken tofu, but not the silken tofu you get in the Tetra packet, the silken tofu that comes from the Asian supermarket. So
Mm,
I guess it's still silken, but it's slightly firmer. But put that in the freezer and it comes out and it's like the results of the firm tofu being frozen 100 times better. It's just so good. It goes really shreddy and yeah, it looks like quite chicken-like.
mm.
And when you season it and put it in sauces and stuff, it's just phenomenal. It's just, yeah, crazy that you can do that and get those results. And it's actually really easy to do with a little bit of planning.
Did your understanding of food or maybe the variety of foods that you were interested change when you went vegan? Because for me, I think there's this misconception for some folks that it'll be really like a restrictive diet, but I've actually found I eat way more and a more variety of things after learning about a plant-based diet.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been like into my veggies, but definitely into the world of tofu and lentils, legumes, that sort of
Hmm.
thing that I didn't have as much experience with. So, yeah, definitely. I think it's broadening. I think it's broadening everything that I know about food rather than the common misconceptions that it's really restrictive. But yeah, it's a strange one. I've come across that quite a few times lately, actually.
I so relate. I'm like, I didn't know what a lentil was. I can tell you that with certainty that I was not cooking lentils beforehand.
No.
Just, and some of that is the standard Western diet that we grew up knowing too, just like the what you know, not even a judgment on myself, just I didn't know what some of these things even were because they weren't a part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. I think it goes into I suppose that we would derail the conversation a little bit, but going into like food education and
Hmm.
how like I don't know what it's like from where you come you're based, but here it's not. amazing. I don't think in the UK you really learn a lot about what is healthy, and what you should and shouldn't be eating. I don't know. I did food technology when I was at high school, but it wasn't nutrition based. It was actually more about. I felt actually looking back on it now, like quite traditional, like how to make a sausage plat, how to
Oh,
make pastry. It was more. It felt looking back on it now, it wasn't very modern, I feel.
so interesting. And I would concur, at least with I can only speak to my experience. I'm in Minnesota in the Midwest of the United States, and that education is not great about food and what nutrition and what vitamins and what nutrients actually come from what foods. I feel is not a part of the conversation. You get that pushback of like, where do you get your protein or something? But I couldn't have told you how much protein I was getting from other sources or from a piece of chicken. I didn't actually know.
No, I just don't think it's taught. It's not taught. Because that's a common one, isn't it? You can only get protein from meat sources, but where did the animals get their protein from? How can they make it? It's such an interesting one that I'm sure we could deep dive into all of the things there. I think it comes a lot with like the GPs and doctors will
Mm,
advise on diet, but I think it came out, especially here, that doctors are only taught for like maybe an hour, a couple of hours, a seminar, something like that about nutrition. That's not a lot to go on for such a large topic.
no, I interviewed a while back for the podcast a man who opened a vegan restaurant in Minnesota, and he was a doctor beforehand and was so frustrated with the system and with the lack of talk about nutrition and bringing that and being able to bring that into his practice that he left the field altogether and opened a vegan restaurant. And that feels like a
Wow.
pretty big indicator of where things are at still in that world. In some places, we know it's changing. I'm not trying to be negative, right? There's so much movement, but it's still a very real gap.
Yeah, I think that is such a that is such a probably an extreme example, but it says so much. It speaks volumes.
Yeah, it really does. So, in terms of thinking of recipes and figuring out what kind of things you're going to try next, I always say that I am not the vegan person to follow for new recipes. I am trying other people's stuff, but my skill set is not to be like, you know what we could make and develop ourselves. That's not going to happen. So, what is that process like? Are you looking to maybe say, I want to make a vegan version of this, or I have a hankering for this? I'm so curious with people who develop recipes, how that works.
Yeah, I guess we both, Dan and I, just absolutely love experimenting in the kitchen, absolutely love trying new recipes. We've got we've got loads of shelves of cookbooks, so there's a lot of good inspiration out there. We really enjoy trying to make vegan versions of things that we knew and loved way back. And Dan's actually working on trying to make jerky out of tofu at the minute. He
And
did. Yeah, it is. He did one experiment. It was dehydrating, but I think the first time he actually dehydrated it too much. So we ended up, it was still amazing actually. Like that's the cool thing. Like you will do an experiment in one recipe and end up making something else completely. It's, oh, this works for this other thing. So yeah, we actually then rehydrated it because we didn't want it to go to waste just because it had been dehydrated too much. And turned it into like meaty strips by
mm,
rehydrating it in the sort of like not meaty flavors, but like with stock and liquid smoke, that sort of thing, to bring out all of
mm.
the richness. And it was absolutely amazing, but not at all what we intended. So there's a lot of testing and a lot of experimenting to get to a desired outcome, but sometimes you end up with something that you didn't think you were going to get, but it works out for the best.
Since going vegan, has that changed like your restaurant going out experience? I know that there are probably a growing amount of places to explore around you in the UK, so that must be fun.
Yeah, there's loads. We're just the type of people that we will book to go somewhere, but we know exactly where we're going to be eating because that's been considered. And we're the type of
The
people.
classic
Yeah.
vegan travel plan.
Exactly. So yeah, it's all booked around that. There's a list. Dan will make us a spreadsheet before we're going on a trip of all of the places that we want to eat at. And we're like, oh, so where should we go today? And this is so handy because you can just be like, we were in Krakow in January. We're like, let's just get this spreadsheet up and see. We haven't been there. It's not that far away. That really does work out. So yeah, loads of places. But I am one of those people that I really get stuck in like my ways. So like at certain restaurants, I will always order the
Same.
exact same thing.
Same. The restaurant I mentioned that I interviewed the doctor who started it. It's a few hours away from me, so when I'm in the area, I always go there and I'm always like on my way. You really should try something different. You don't have to get the Caesar salad with soy bacon and Oreo shake. And then I get there and I'm like, I just it's what I want.
Yeah, why? Why would you go? You know what you're getting. You know how good it is. Why
True.
do we need to experiment in that way?
Thank you. I feel validated.
Yeah, we're on the same page there.
What other aspects of your life or maybe the way you operate in the world even have shifted after going vegan?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I just feel a lot more conscious of making the right choices for people and planet, even down to recycling or making sure it's all separated the right way and bringing definitely brought more into my awareness of like where things come from and how they are disposed of or reused.
I love that. I love that there's often so many connecting points that again just continue for me to highlight that there's no way to isolate these movements, these levels of oppression, these systems, right? That there's no way to deconnect them.
Yeah, 100%. Once you see it and connect it, it becomes really difficult to ignore.
Yeah, it really does. It's the can't unsee some of the things you learn. And of course, that's a good thing in so many ways, but there's really no turning back.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard. It can be really hard. But also, I think it highlights that you can't be perfect as well. I always think of, did you ever watch The Good Place?
Yes.
Yeah, I always think of Chidi when you can't even get a coffee without exploiting someone. That just sums it up.
Yeah, truly. It's such a good reminder. And I think it is, everyone needs that reminder as often as possible that's in this movement, in any of these spaces, trying to make change in the world because it's really easy, especially for me. I'm coming from such a seat of privilege. I'm like, I want to do more, and what can I do? And I'm not doing enough, and all of the things that come with that. And while those are valid and important to consider, I also know that if I burn myself out, I'm not useful to anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And you're worse, so much worse off for that time where you've got to rebuild yourself.
Yes, 100%. It is something I've been considering just more and more lately in this work and in life of holding all of the things and the hard things and the scary things, the things that we want to change, and continuing to have that joy and not let that slip away.
Yeah, that's such a skill. I think for a time I got so deep into I can't do this and I can't do that. And it
And
felt like I was stuck. And I think you have to, so it's a learning curve and a growth point.
yeah, truly, it really is. And I know I have more learning and growing to do.
Yeah, for sure. Don't we all?
Is there anything you want to share with listeners that I haven't given you space to do?
So we've soft launched this e-cookbook and that is an accompaniment to the viral tofu science series that's got over 30 of our tofu recipes in that uses all the
Yum.
different techniques that we have been experimenting with so that yeah people can just see that from our Instagram, or if they DM me just say tofu cookbook and I'll send them over to the right place.
Amazing. I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm excited. There have been some recipes that I've saved that I haven't tried yet, so maybe having the cookbook will be helpful.
Yes, all in one place. It makes such a big difference.
It really does. It's better for my brain in terms of planning meals and food and everything. I'll save a reel and be like, I'm gonna try that, and it's lost.
It's lost. I know so many reels, and then you have to go back to it, and then it keeps playing while you're trying to.
The music is going, and you're like, ah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's a good. I hope it'll be a helpful thing for people.
that's amazing. We can share that in the show notes as well, and
Oh,
I'll have
amazing.
to check it out, and maybe I'll make a recipe or two on my page and see how it works.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. I hope you like them. That'd be so cool to see. I'll look out for it.
Awesome. I will let you know. Thank you, Jessica, so much for being on the podcast. It was a blast.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode of Consciously Clueless. And for that, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, tag me when you share in social media, or share this episode with others who may be interested in the topic. Any sharing truly means the world to me. Join the community at patreon.com/consciouslycarly for bonus podcast content like smoke sessions with Consciously Cannabis guests, video versions of solo episodes, monthly live calls, one-to-one support, more lifestyle content, mindfulness resources, and more. Until next time, stay consciously clueless.